Welcome back to the channel. My name is Stuart Lee, and today we're going to talk about Google Calendar. And I know I've talked about Google Calendar in the past, but that was a long time ago. And so today we're going to talk about Google Calendar the way it is in 2019 and kind of walk through it from start to finish as if we've never seen Google Calendar before, and kind of show you where everything is and kind of how to use certain pieces of it. So let's check it out. So here I am in Chrome browser, but this would work in any browser on a computer. And I'm going to go to calendar.google.com. Or you could go to google.com/calendar. Either way. But once you get there, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to default to a week view. You're going to have a few things over here on the left. You're going to have some things maybe in your calendar. I've got holidays in the United States turned on by default, so I see that today is Columbus Day. Happy Columbus Day. And so that's about it. It's very plain. So there's a couple of ways we can jump into it. First off, if we want to put something on our calendar, we can go to Create. And when we go to Create, it creates an event right now. And so we can go in here and add all this information, and we're going to talk about that very specifically in just a few minutes. First thing we want to do, though, is check out what kind of view we want. We can go from a week view to a day view, so we can see hour by hour, kind of like an agenda. Or we could go to a month view, which is my preferred viewing of Google Calendars. If you want a sneak peek, this is my calendar. This is what I look at all the time. We could also go to a yearly view if we want to get a big picture of the year, if we're doing some planning. Or we can do a 4-day view. And this is actually kind of handy. I use this one on occasion too, just to see what's coming up in the next 2 or 3 days and kind of schedule out some meetings if I need to. So we'll go back to the month view just because that's what I'm familiar with, and I can show you more things with it. Now, we've only got these calendars over here on the side. So the first thing I want to show you how to do, other than change the view, is how to create a new calendar. Because Google Calendar, you got to get out of the mindset of this is my calendar. This is 1 month. This is 1 month, and I write everything in this calendar. Or I might use different colors or cursive or whatever. Google Calendar is calendar upon calendar layered on top of each other. So you can turn off certain calendars and you can turn on calendars, and all of it's in your one Google Calendar view. So right now, really the only calendars we have are the default ones. The default one is your name always. And then typically you have your contacts, a reminders, and a tasks. And if you have the reminders, Google Reminders app on your phone, if you set reminders in your Google Calendar on your computer, it'll remind you on your phone when the time or location is appropriate. And the same with tasks. You can look at tasks anywhere on your phone, on your device, or here in your calendar. So I want to create a new calendar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new calendar. So here where it says other calendars, I have a plus. So I want to click that plus, and I want to create a new calendar. Now, in this same menu, I can subscribe to calendars. So if I go to a web page and says subscribe to our calendar, and it gives you like an iCal link or something, you can use that here. Browse resources. Resources are interesting calendars in your district, or like Clemson University football schedule would be a calendar resource that I could find that somebody has published. I don't know who it is. Published online. We'll add that one in a little bit. Same as calendars of interest. URL, that's if you have the web page. Or you could import a calendar from like your Yahoo account or your Outlook account. Import a calendar that you have downloaded. Well, we're going to create a new calendar. And so we get an option once we click on that to give it a name. So we will just call this one simply school calendar. And we can give it a description. And we can set a time zone. So we can actually set the time zone different for this calendar than a different calendar. So if you have a child that's off in college and you want to set the time zone for them and have a calendar that bounces between the two of you or something like that. But once we get the general information in there, we just hit create calendar. It's going to take a second. It's creating this calendar in the account. It's setting up all the background information. And now it says successfully created. So we can configure it, or I'm going to show you how to configure it in a little bit. So now that we have two calendars, we have our school calendar and we have our calendar. So now let's start creating events. So we can click the create button and it puts it for right now, well, the next half hour from now, but today. Or, let me close that, we can schedule stuff out in the future. So I can click on the day that I want to schedule it. And let's just call this one meeting. And here I can set what day it is, or if it's multi-days, I can actually set it for 2 days. And you see on the calendar, it goes ahead and expands it. Now, it's just a bar right now because there is no time. If I added a time, and I said 2:30 to let's just say 3:30 today, or that same day, now it's just got a dot because it's a specific amount of time. So it's easy to tell if something's an all-day event or if it's a specific time event, because an all-day event is like Halloween. It's just a solid bar of color. But if it's just a specific time event, it's going to have the time with it, and it's just going to be a dot of color next to it. So it's an easy way to tell if something's given a time or if this is just something I need to know for the whole day. I can also, in this view, add some guests to that event. I can add locations or video conferencing. I can add some descriptions, or I can change the calendar. I can also do reminders or tasks from here. I can set myself as out of the office from here, or I can make this an appointment slot, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But a better view of looking at all of these different options is just to go into more options. So here, everything is a little bit more spread out, and we can actually see what's going on. So in this view, I can go and I can change, when things are, the time, the dates. I can also set it so that it repeats. So if I need it to repeat every Thursday, or once a month on Thursday, or once a year on the 17th, or every day, or I can do a custom one. If I wanted to do this repeats every 3 days, if you got something that's funky like that, you can set any kind of combination in here, and then it'll end. It defaults to never, but if you wanted to end on a certain date, or after it occurs so many different times. So if you know that this is going to be like a 10-session meeting, you can set it to end after 10 occurrences, and then you don't have to figure out when that 10th occurrence is. Google Calendar is going to schedule it out for you, and then after 10 occurrences, it will not be on your calendar anymore. So after that, we can add a location, and you can either add like a map location, or you can just call it, boardroom. So it does not have to be an actual Google Maps location, but if it is a Google Maps location, it will provide you with a link that you can click, and it will give you Google Maps directions to that. You can add conferencing, Google Hangouts or Google Meet. If you click to select that, it will give you a join code. Everybody that's invited to this event will get that same code so they could come in if it's going to be an online or hybrid type situation with the meeting. You can set notifications. You can either have an email notification, which is very self-explanatory, or a notification, which means it's a little pop-up that comes up on your browser or on your phone or both. 10 minutes before, if I wanted to do another one, I could do an email 1 day before. So that way I get an email reminder the day before to make sure all my stuff is ready. And then 10 minutes before the meeting, I get another notification on my phone that dings and reminds me that, hey, you got to go to the meeting in 10 minutes. Now, down here, we have Stuart Lee. Now, yes, that's my name, but those are the calendars I can pick from. So I don't have to pick the calendar to put the event on. I can go ahead and start creating the event and then put it on whatever calendar I need to. We can also change the color of the event here, but I typically don't do that, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. You can also set yourself for busy or free, and this is if you've shared your calendar where somebody can see if you're busy or free. If they're trying to schedule a meeting with you and you're busy during this time, and they try to schedule and send you an invite at that same time, they'll get a response saying that you're busy, please try and pick another time. So if you're going to use that feature, you can go ahead and just leave it this way. It defaults to busy whenever you have any kind of an event. So it works out pretty well by default, but that's what that means if you're curious. And the default visibility is private. It defaults to private because this calendar is private. So whatever this calendar's permissions are is what your event defaults to by default. Now, if you want to go in and make this a public event on a private calendar, you can do that. Or if you want to make this a private event on a public calendar, you can do that too. Typically, I leave it as default because I set my calendars the way I want them to be. So if I have a public calendar, I want everything on it to be public. And if I have a non-public calendar, I want everything to be non-public. I typically don't mix them up, but you could if you wanted to. And then you could add a description here of any sort. And you can link things from your Google Drive. So if you had an agenda, you can totally link your agenda. And it puts it in here. You can do some, text formatting. You can add a link. So I can insert a link there. You can put a lot of information here so that people, when they're invited to this event, can have all the information you need them to have. And if they, after the event, they can always go back and look at all the information from there. You could even put your meeting notes or minutes from the meeting into your calendar event after the fact, and then everybody has them and it's associated with that time and date and location. Now you can add guests, so I'm going to add myself as a guest. And it will tell me that, the calendar can't be shown because the calendar is not shared with this account. But it will send me an email saying, you have been invited to this calendar event from Stuart Lee. Would you like to accept? Yes, no, maybe. Now, I can set these permissions right now, too. I can give whoever's invited permissions to modify the event. That means change anything. They can add their own notes, that sort of thing. But that means they can also delete it. So be careful how you share that. You can set it so they can invite others. So if it's a, hey, if this is interesting to anybody in your department, please share kind of situation. See the guest list. Maybe you want a surprise party and you want to invite everybody, but you don't want everybody seeing who all's coming. You can uncheck that one, and now nobody can see who else is coming. The invite others and see guest list typically are defaulted on. So if I hit save, and I'll go ahead and send, and I need access. So I've added, what's happened here is I've added a document that is not shared with the person in the event. So it's asking me, do you want to share this document, which would be the agenda or the notes or whatever, with this person? And all you have to do is say invite, and now this account has shared that document and that event with my other account. And I just got an email notification saying I have been shared an event and a Google Doc. Well, a PDF from Google Doc. So you see how this is yellow, the holidays are green, and let's just make one on my calendar. Happy day. We'll just make it an all day. So, and then the Stuart Lee one is blue. If I uncheck Stuart Lee, that goes away. So remember I was saying that it's calendar upon calendar upon calendar. It's kind of a layered effect. Anytime that the color and a check mark is visible over here on the left, you can see the events on that calendar. Anytime you uncheck it, the calendar is still there, but the event disappeared. So if you want to clear out some of the clutter, you can turn off some calendars. Or if you only want to look at one particular calendar at a time, you're trying to schedule something. But typically, I'll leave all of mine on so I can see everything going on in a particular time frame. Your contacts and reminders, I typically leave those on as well. Now, remember I said I didn't change the event colors because you can change the colors of the calendars. So if I click on the 3 dots next to a calendar, I get an option to change the color of that calendar. And so that's where I do my colors. Each one of my calendars, I typically set as a particular color, and then I know which calendar that is. So all of my work stuff is one color, all of my personal stuff is one color, all of my family stuff is one color, and I can just quickly glance at it and I say, oh, that's on this calendar, that's on that calendar. So it's about work, it's about family, it's about personal, just based off the colors. If you start going into setting individual events, you'll have to keep track of that color coding. You'll have to remember, well, is this event a family event or is it just a personal event? You know, it can get confusing if you want to go with a color coding options. And the colors are only for you. The colors do not share out with the event. So when you set your colors, they're just for you. Somebody else with that same event or that same shared calendar can set their own colors for them. So the colors are only a personal organizational scheme. So I've shown you how to add people as a guest to an event. Let's show you how to add people as a manager of your calendar, or just share the calendar with somebody else so they can view it. So I'm going to go to my school calendar, and I'm going to go to the three dots and click on that, and I can go down here to settings and sharing. And I can rename it if I want to. You can always rename a calendar. If you need to export it, like if you wanted to export it and take it to Outlook or something like that, you can export it here. You can just skip the automatically add invites to the calendar. If you wanted to make this a public calendar, this is where you would do it. You would just check and make available to the public. It will give you a warning saying, hey, do you really want to make this available to the public? You say, okay, yes, I'm sure I want to do this. Boom, it's now available to the public, and it will give you a link. Right now I have it shared with the domain. I can uncheck that, and now it's only shared with me. Nobody else can see anything. But this is what I'm looking for. Share with specific people. So if I wanted to add somebody to this calendar, such as myself, I put in my email address, and then I can pick how much of that calendar they get to do. So I can share a calendar with somebody, and they can only see if I'm free or if I'm busy. They can't see what I'm doing. They can only see, hey, Stuart's busy, hey, Stuart's free. Or they can see all the event details. That means they can look and they can see I have a meeting, and they can go in and they can say, oh, he's got a meeting here and a meeting here, and he's free the rest of the week. Or he can make change, or the other person can make changes to the event, meaning they can go in and add a Google Doc, or they can go in and add a location. They can change the event. They can't change who can see the calendar, but they can change that event. They can also delete the event or add an event to the calendar, an event that does not exist. So this would be good for like a personal assistant or secretary or coworker when you guys are managing a joint calendar, or somebody that manages your calendar for you. Make changes and manage sharing. That is almost as much power over the calendar as the owner. They can say who can see this calendar, who can't. They can set it to public. They can unset it to public. They get a lot of control over that calendar with that setting. So we'll just make it so that I'm not quite super duper in charge. So I'll just make it change to event, and then we'll hit send. And so now I will get an email, which I just did, saying that this account has been invited to the calendar from this account, and I would be able to go in and do stuff. I can do some default event notifications. I can set my general notifications if I want them as emails. This is all default stuff. You can go through and set all of these. Typically, I set all of these. I don't set the daily agenda except for my work account. But anytime, I usually set them as email. And that way, anything that happens to events on that calendar that I've been invited to or that I've done, I'll get an email notification if something changes, somebody accepts, somebody declines. Then if I ever wanted to make it public and publish this on a web page, here's my embed codes. It's always handy to know where they are. But all of this is just under the settings. And it's just one long page of settings. It's very simple. So once we have our settings, there's no save. We just back out, and now our settings are set. The last thing I wanted to show you before we quit is appointment slots. Now, appointment slots are only available for GSuite customers only. So that means most school districts, if you're a GSuite school district, that means if you have a Google account through your school, you probably have access to this. If you don't, check with your system administrator or your Google administrator. But what you can do is come in and, as if you're going to create a normal event, But where you can come through here, you can pick appointment slots. So I'll pick that. It changes some of my options. So we'll say meeting time or office hours. That's a better one. So we have office hours. Now I can set my office hours for one day, and I want them from 2:30 to 5:30. Now, I can set the amount of time for these. I'm going to do slots with duration or a single slot. I'm going to do slots with duration, and I want these to be a 30-minute duration. Okay? Now, I can also set which calendar has these appointment slots. So obviously, I want to make this my school calendar because it's office hours. I can come in here and get more options as before. We can repeat this. So I want to repeat this one day after, and we'll end after 2 occurrences, just so you can see what that looks like. We can add a location. We can change the times. We can change the appointment slot durations. We can add a description. But the important thing is we have this calendar's appointment page. So if I click on that, it says there's none here because we haven't saved it yet. But I'm going to leave this tab open and we'll come back to it and I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. So we have everything set the way we want it. We're going to hit save. And so now we have this little grid next to office hours for the 2 days that we have our office hours. That little grid will indicate to you when you're looking at it, those are my office hours. All right. Now, if I click on it, it says go to the appointment page for this calendar. That's the page we just opened in this other tab. Now, I can also delete from here. I can email anybody who signed up for office hours, or I can go in and edit the appointment from here. So let's go back to our calendar view. And so now that we have saved our appointment slots, you see we have different clickable office hours locations from 2:30 all the way up to 4:30. So if I, or 5:30. So if I click on one, it'll book an appointment. So I can go in here and I can say need to talk about homework. Hopefully homework is about spelling because I can't spell. Sends it to me by default, can't change that. Sets the time. I hit save. And your appointment has been saved. So I can close out and come back over here. And now you see that Stuart Lee, me, has signed up for office hours at 2:30. If I go back in over here and I click on that one and save. And you see how the office hours are being booked. So they're going away and they're not clickable after somebody's already booked it. So I can close that. And now I have one at 2:30 and I have one at 4:30. So you see, and the name shows up here. So it doesn't say Stuart Lee right here because it's my calendar. It says Stuart Lee right there because that's who signed up for that slot. Does that make sense? And the yellow is my school calendar. So let's just turn that off. So this would be if somebody else signed up, somebody else named Stuart Lee signed up. This is what you would see as they signed up. On your calendar, if you sign up for appointment slots, this is what you see. It says Stuart Lee because that's who the appointment is with. Okay? I hope that's not too confusing because I'm on both of those. What you need to do, though, to get other people to sign up for your appointment slots is to send them this link. So if you go to the appointment slot page and you copy this link, and email it to them, anybody can click on that link and anybody can sign up for your appointment slots. Those appointment slots become public accessible. This page is publicly accessible. The calendar is not. So let me say that again. This page is accessible by this link. The calendar events and the calendar is not accessible. It shows me right here because it's my calendar. I do have permissions to see it. But if I was just John Q Public, I wouldn't be able to see who's there. I would just see a blank. Does that make sense? So, just like this one. So this one's just blank. That's what I would see. I would not see who actually signs up. But that is, in a nutshell, as quick as I could go through it, Google Calendar from start to finish. I hope that this helped you out with using Google Calendar. Remember, if you can't remember where something is, you can always click on the settings menu up here at the top, the gear, and go to settings. And everything is laid out for you. If you're wanting to manage a calendar, settings for my calendars, down here, school calendar. Oh, I forgot to show you how to add a calendar. So if we're going to add a calendar of interest, we're going to go to sports. We're going to go to sports. We're going to go to football. We're going to go to NCAA. And we'll scroll down to Clemson Tigers. We will check the box. And now the Clemson schedule is automatically up here. Other people make those calendars. Again, use them for what they're worth. They're free. So know that they're free. If it's not right, I don't think there's any kind of money back guarantee on them. So hope this helped. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Give me a thumbs up if you like this particular video, if it was helpful. Be sure to ask questions in the comments or just leave me a comment to let me know how I can make better videos for you, because that's why I do it after all. And thanks for watching.